Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and today we're talking about PlayStation because there have been some giant question marks about what Sony's plans are for summer, because historically, for the last 3 decades at least, we've had pretty much 30 years of big PlayStation showcases. I mean, this is typically the time. We used to have E3, and this is when Nintendo would come out and do a direct, Microsoft would do a big Xbox showcase, but this year it sounds like we are going to be getting a Sony show soon. In fact, here in the next couple weeks, but already the leakers are basically saying, temper your expectations. This isn't going to be a big blowout showcase like people have been begging for. It's probably going to be a one-game state of play, or maybe a couple games. But let's take a look at the leaks, the sources, the reactions, because I'm still staying cautiously optimistic. Hi, I am DreamcastGuy. If you could please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, this actually comes from 2 separate sources, but it's very verified by Jeff Grubb. Now, Nate Drake is a guy who's over on the Reset Era forums. He's also known as Nate the Hate, does a ton of leaks, and the guy has a crazy good track record. I mean, Nate Drake has done stuff like leaked the exact day of the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal. He's a guy who talks a lot about peripherals, upcoming stuff, game trailers. The guy knows what he knows, and he's basically said, I have not heard anything about a May event this year. And basically Jeff Grubb said, yes, building on that, there isn't going to be a May event because it's a June event. Now, is this event going to be a big showcase? I don't think so. I've heard a couple months ago that there was discussions inside of Sony going back and forth about doing a big showcase for a state of play, and it sounds like they've settled on a state of play. Now, if you're kind of new to the hype business, maybe you don't know this, but usually Sony does 2 different flavors of presentation. A PlayStation showcase is usually the big blowout events. Usually it's like 2 hours long. That's when they do stuff like when they revealed God of War coming back or Hideo Kojima's new projects. It's usually when they come out and say, it's more than just, hey, here's what we're working on. Showcases are usually when they show a ton of different stuff from a ton of different developers. Whereas a state of play, 90% of the time, even when they do have other third-party stuff, usually it's focused on a couple specific games. In fact, a lot of times they do state of plays dedicated to one game, and I have a feeling that's what this is going to be. I think there's a good chance this is going to be a Ghost of Yotei state of play, which is still going to be fun, but not nearly as hyped as a showcase. Now, immediately, the comments are like, this has the vibe of we have to do something. Sony getting all of Jeff's leftovers after Summer Games Fest. Going to be worse than usual. This is the strange dynamic that I feel like everybody in the industry is kind of having to deal with. And I think it's interesting, which is that a lot of people have been against Summer Games Fest because on paper, it's a good idea. Let's do a fan-focused E3, something that's more about just having cool games and letting the developers really let their art breathe. But that's kind of not the way it's been. The biggest problem with Summer Games Fest is that it's not this laser-focused content package. I've always thought that the best part of watching E3, at least back in the day, was that it was 3 or 4 days. It was just constantly presentation, hype cycle, next event. Here's NVIDIA showing stuff off. Here's Ubisoft doing a dance competition. Whereas Summer Games Fest, trying to do 3 weeks of trailers and presentations, it makes it so a lot of it gets watered down. But it's also a bigger net. A lot of companies show their stuff at Summer Games Fest, which means first party, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, they kind of do their own presentations off to the side, which has been good here and there, but I do have a feeling that this showcase, even if it does have other games, it's going to be tiny indie projects or weird stuff. It's not going to be the big attention-grabbing stuff. But let me go through that. Jeff Grubb has come out and said this here. He says it might still be a PlayStation showcase, leaning to a state of play being in June. Honestly, this to me wouldn't be the biggest shock, but let me go into this. Here's the thing. There are projects that are confirmed to know exist, like Lost Soul aside. There's a lot of rumored projects coming up. There were leaks from the Insomniac thing that there's apparently already a Venom standalone game called Venom Lethal Protector, which is basically Venom in the comics became a hero, kind of. He basically ends up going and fighting crime. There's talks that we're going to get a Venom game that apparently is already pretty much complete. they could reveal that. There's talks about apparently a Stellar Blade sequel is already being talked about. There's talks about a God of War remake. There's a lot of stuff still out there. Wolverine, we know, is full-blown development. Sony Santa Monica has very much said that there is a secret Cory Balrog project. There's talks about Naughty Dog has said they're working on a game besides Intergalactic. There's a B team inside of Naughty Dog that's working on something that a lot of people, myself included, think it's probably Uncharted 4, which I think would be cool. There's a lot of talks that Nathan Drake's daughter, which is Cassie Drake, getting her own game. There's even been some leaked mocap photos, it seems like, where maybe this next Uncharted game is very, very, very deep in development. There is a lot of stuff that could be shown, but if I'm being brutally honest, I do think that 99% chance this is going to be mostly two things. There's going to be two things from this presentation that actually get attention. I think 85% of it is just going to be about Ghost of Yotei. Now, I'm excited about that. I am very excited for Ghost of Yotei. Ghost of Tsushima, I ended up giving a 10 out of 10. I platinumed it on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Ghost of Tsushima is a masterpiece, and seeing Sucker Punch come back and do even bigger budget, even bigger world, I'm extremely excited about this game. So if they just came out and said, hey, the entire state of play is just about Ghost of Yotei, personally, I would be extremely excited about it, because even though they've released some screenshots and some, I think they've done 2 3-minute trailers, I would love to see a 30-minute presentation about how it plays. Show me what's different, because in my opinion, Ghost of Tsushima is already so damn good. If they just built upon that, even 10% more, I'd be absolutely thrilled out of my mind. But I do think there might be a surprise. A little extra thing to kind of be silly. So as I record this video, they just announced a big, giant update for Starfield. Now, yesterday we talked about the fact that it was just revealed that Hellblade 2 is coming to PlayStation 5, Gears of War is coming to PlayStation 5, Forza's on PlayStation 5. I do think that's pretty obvious that, well, Starfield is coming to PlayStation 5. With this big final update coming to the console version of Xbox, I do think they're prepping these final bug fixes for some sort of definitive edition. I do think it would be interesting if we just saw, the Rings of Saturn and stuff, and they said, hey, the biggest Bethesda game of all time, the highest budget Bethesda game of all time, now on PlayStation. I think that would be a funny closeout for a PlayStation showcase if it ended with an Xbox reveal. Short and sweet of it, I am still hoping it's awesome, but at this point, the people that are saying PlayStation scraps, I think that's probably the safest prediction. But how do you feel about a PlayStation showcase? How do you feel about a PlayStation State of Play? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. Oh man, I hope we see a lot. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.